Emily Hart had never thought of herself as a woman who could betray someone, least of all her husband. For more than 8 years, she and Daniel had lived what others called a beautiful marriage, calm, respectable, adult. They had a neat house with pale walls and tall windows, a small garden Daniel took pride in on weekends, and a kitchen that always smelled of roasted coffee in the mornings. People admired them, envied them, even. Emily often wondered what those same people would say if they could hear what the house sounded like after the front door closed each night. Silence, so thick she could almost taste it. Daniel wasn't a bad man. That was what made everything so much worse. He was kind, responsible, intelligent, too intelligent, perhaps, for his own good. His job as a financial consultant consumed him the way drowning water consumes a man who never realized how far from the surface he'd gone. He left home early, returned late, ate quietly, and fell asleep before they could exchange more than a handful of sentences. In the early years, Emily had teased him, grabbing his hand, trying to pull him back into the present, like someone tugging a sleeve of a friend drifting away. But over the years, she had stopped tugging. The distance settled slowly, quietly, like dust, the kind you don't see right away until sunlight hits the right angle. Some nights Emily simply sat at the kitchen table long after dinner, staring at the untouched second glass of wine, listening to the sound of Daniel's steady breathing from the bedroom. She tried to tell herself that this was marriage, real marriage, not the fireworks of early love, not the drama of youth, but something stable, grounded, the kind of love society applauded. And yet stability could become a cage. Emily's days flowed together in a gentle, numbing routine. She worked remotely as a marketing designer, nothing demanding enough to distract her mind, but just enough to keep her busy. She liked her work, but the house was too quiet during the day, and when Daniel wasn't home, even the clock's ticking sounded like a reminder of empty hours. When they sat together at breakfast, Daniel scrolled through emails as he chewed toast. When she asked about his week, he answered in clipped numbers and business jargon, eyes still on the phone. She wanted more, not money or gifts, just presence. A touch on the arm, a lingering conversation, a laugh shared for no reason at all. But Daniel didn't notice the shift in her breathing, the tense curve of her shoulders, the way her voice grew softer each month. And Emily, instead of speaking up, lowered herself into silence. After all, how could she complain about a man who worked so hard for them, who kissed her forehead every morning on his way out, who never fought, never criticized, never raised a voice? But love could die quietly, without a single argument. A moment of change. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Emily's life shifted. She had driven downtown for a client meeting, one of the few that required her to leave the house. The cafe was warm, crowded, the air fragrant with cinnamon and espresso. People filled the space with chatter and laughter, and Emily found herself starved for noise, for human presence. Her client ran late, and as she sat scrolling through her tablet, someone approached. "Is this seat taken?" She looked up. A man stood beside her table holding a laptop bag, early 40s perhaps, with the kind of gentle confidence that didn't need to announce itself. His eyes were warm, unreadable, the color of dark honey. "No," she said, "go ahead." He sat down, opened his laptop, and for a while they didn't speak. She tried to stay focused on her designs, but soon she felt his gaze flick in her direction. "You gave that screen the same look I give my tax returns," he said with a faint, teasing smile. She blinked, half laughing. "That bad?" "Well, you didn't sigh, but I saw the facial tension, subtle but unmistakable." Emily smiled, actually smiled, a full one that reached her eyes, and she was startled by how rare that felt. "I'm Leo," he said, offering his hand. "Emily." They shook hands, and his touch lingered just long enough to feel meaningful without crossing any line. Her client arrived shortly after, flustered and full of apologies. Emily handled the meeting with professional grace, but a few times her gaze drifted to Leo, who was busy typing, occasionally sipping his coffee. When the meeting ended, she gathered her things and turned toward him to say a polite goodbye. But he spoke first. "Same time tomorrow." She hesitated. Why would he assume? Leo nodded toward her tablet. "You were definitely more focused after I arrived. I think I bring good productivity energy." Her cheeks warmed. "Or maybe you distract me." He laughed, a warm, low sound. "Even better." Emily walked out of the cafe with her heart beating faster than it had in months. The spark that shouldn't grow. She told herself it was nothing, a pleasant conversation with a stranger, a spark not dangerous on its own. But loneliness made even small fires feel like salvation. The next day, Emily found herself choosing the same cafe at the same hour. She told herself she was just hopping for workflow ambience. But when she pushed the door open and saw Leo already there, looking up with a slow smile as though expecting her, something inside her chest shifted. "Hi," he said softly. And she realized how long it had been since someone greeted her like that, with warmth, interest, and not distracted mid-email. They talked for hours, not flirtatiously at first, just openly, about work, music, their cities, small annoyances, favorite books. He had the rare skill of listening without rushing to speak. Emily found herself admitting little things she had never said aloud, like how she used to paint but hadn't touched a brush in years, how nights felt too quiet, how she sometimes felt invisible without knowing why. Leo didn't offer solutions, he simply listened. When she got home that evening, Daniel was asleep on the couch, suit jacket folded over the armrest, his tie loosened. He looked exhausted. She stood over him, her purse still on her shoulder, and felt an ache of guilt burn through her chest. She leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to his temple. He didn't wake. Emily showered, changed into something comfortable, and sat on the edge of the bed. She should have felt content after such a pleasant afternoon, but instead, she felt like someone who had just taken the first step onto ice that might break at any moment. Because for the first time in years, she had felt seen. And that was dangerous. Slipping away without realizing. Days blurred. Leo became part of her routine, unplanned meetings that didn't feel unplanned at all. A cup of coffee, an exchange of smiles, conversations that grew longer and deeper. Emily began to dress with a little more care before leaving the house, noticing details she hadn't paid attention to in years. Daniel noticed nothing, not her suddenly brighter eyes, not the small changes in her voice, not the way she checked her phone when it buzzed with a new message. He barely noticed her, period. One evening over dinner, she tried to start a conversation. "Maybe this weekend we could go somewhere," she said, "just the two of us." Daniel, cutting into his steak, didn't look up. "This weekend? I've got a big report due Monday. Maybe next time." There was no malice in his voice, no impatience, just the flat practicality of a man who couldn't imagine that saying maybe next time enough times could become a silent weapon. Emily nodded, stabbing her salad without tasting it. She thought of Leo listening to her describe her fears, her hopes, her boredom, without checking a screen even once. How unfair, she thought, how naive her heart was. But hearts rarely listen to reason. She washed the dishes alone that night. Daniel worked in the study with the door closed, and somewhere in the silence between them, the distance grew another inch. Emily had known, of course, that she should slow down, that she should pull away before the ground beneath her feet shifted completely. But emotional cracks rarely widen with explosions. They widen with quiet, subtle pressure, day after day, until one morning you wake up and realize the earth has already split. Friday afternoon found her sitting in the cafe again, though she had not planned to go. She had told herself she would stay home, focus on her deadlines, stop playing with fire. She had made tea, set up her laptop, turned on music. But after 20 minutes she was standing in front of the mirror applying mascara she rarely wore at home. She told herself she needed a different workspace, a change of scenery, nothing more. She didn't believe her own excuses, but she went anyway. Leo was already there, typing, a white cup of cappuccino steaming beside him. He looked up the moment she walked in, and his smile was different that day, quieter, softer, almost relieved. "I was hoping you'd come," he said, closing his laptop halfway. And just like that, Emily's resolution, fragile to begin with, snapped like an overstressed thread. She sat down, tugging her coat off her shoulders. "You're making this feel like a routine. Is it a bad one?" She didn't answer, couldn't. Her pulse was too loud in her ears. Leo leaned in slightly. "You had that look again, the one from last time, something on your mind." Emily hesitated. She could have said nothing. She could have changed the subject. But something in his eyes made her feel safe, not in the way one feels safe from danger, but in the way someone drowning feels safe seeing land. "I just feel like I'm living in a house full of walls," she said quietly. He waited, no interruptions. "My husband works all the time. He's not cruel. He's not a bad man. He just isn't there. And I don't know when it happened, but I feel like we're partners in logistics instead of life." Leo nodded slowly, his expression unreadable but deeply attentive. "Loneliness is its own kind of grief," he murmured. Her eyes stung unexpectedly. She looked away, pretending to adjust a napkin. "You deserve to be looked at, Emily," he said softly. "To be heard, to be wanted." She shouldn't have let those words settle. She shouldn't have taken the warmth they brought. But she did. And that was how it began. The weekend that should have been better. Saturday morning, Emily woke early and spent the first 10 seconds with her heart full of Leo's voice. She hated herself for that. She showered, dressed, made fresh coffee. Daniel joined her in the kitchen 20 minutes later, tie already on, hair still damp. "You're working today?" she asked, trying to keep disappointment out of her tone. He nodded, buttering toast without looking up. "If I finish ahead of schedule, maybe we can have dinner out." "Maybe," she echoed. He finally registered her tone and glanced at her. It's been a rough quarter. You know how it is." She did know. She just wished knowing didn't hurt so much. Daniel leaned in and kissed her cheek, affectionate, brief, automatic, and left for the office. The click of the front door echoed like punctuation to a sentence she didn't want to read anymore. Emily stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the half-empty second coffee cup across the table. A matching cup, a pair that no longer matched anything in their lives. She thought briefly about calling a friend, going shopping, cleaning the house, anything to fill the space. But instead she grabbed her phone and typed a message before she could stop herself. "You in the cafe today?" The reply came within 20 seconds. "I can be." She closed her eyes. She should have stopped, but she didn't. Something that felt too easy. They spent the afternoon walking through the city. It was warm for late autumn, and the golden leaves rustled underfoot, smelling faintly of rain and wood. Leo told stories, small ones, funny ones. Emily found herself laughing in a way she hadn't laughed in years, clutching her stomach, leaning forward, unable to stop tears of laughter building in her eyes. People passing by might have seen them and thought, a couple on a date. That thought pierced her with guilt so sharp she stumbled internally. Leo noticed immediately. "Hey," he said gently, "where did you just go?" She shook her head. "I shouldn't be doing this." He stopped walking. They stood beneath a maple tree fiery with orange leaves, the world noisy around them yet strangely still. "Emily," he said softly, "we're just talking." "It's already more than that." His expression changed, not predatory, not triumphant, but something sad and understanding. "You're not happy, that's what's more." She closed her eyes. Happiness isn't a reason to ruin someone else's life. "And loneliness," he asked, "doesn't that ruin lives too?" Her chin trembled. She hated that he was right. She hated that part of her needed him to be right. "Let's get coffee," he said gently, offering his hand. not for romance, but as someone offering balance to someone unsteady. They walked again. Inside the cafe, the world resumed its predictable rhythm, spoons against cups, keyboards clicking, music low. They sat in the corner, the window washing them in afternoon light. "I don't want to destroy my marriage," she said quietly. "Then don't," Leo replied. "Nothing we've done so far has destroyed anything." They both knew it wasn't entirely true. Emotional cheating begins long before bodies meet. But she let his lie comfort her. They talked for hours. They shared stories, dreams, memories. She learned he was a freelance photographer, recently divorced, someone who had also felt unseen in his marriage. His wife had left, not for another man, but because they had grown into strangers beside each other. "I know what it's like," he said, "to live in a house where you're ghosts to each other." Emily swallowed hard. "Sometimes I feel like I'm fatting." "Then hold on to the things that remind you you're alive." And then he reached forward, not boldly, not forcefully, and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. A simple gesture. A dangerous one. Emily froze, her breath caught. Leo's fingers lingered half a second too long. She could have pulled back. But she didn't. Daniel notices a shift. That night Daniel came home earlier than expected. Emily was sitting on the couch reading, a small throw blanket covering her legs. She looked up when he entered, surprised. "You're home early." "I figured I needed a break," he said, dropping his briefcase. "I thought maybe we could cook together." Her heart lurched, guilt ached, hope tangled into one painful knot. They cooked pasta side by side. At first it felt awkward, as though they were dancing without music, but slowly the familiarity of it warmed the kitchen. Daniel grated cheese. She sliced tomatoes. They exchanged small, shy smiles like two people who remembered they once liked each other. Halfway through the meal, Daniel looked at her more closely than he had in months. "You seem different lately," he said slowly. Her pulse spiked. She kept her expression neutral. "Different how?" "I don't know, happier maybe, or distant, it's hard to tell." She swallowed. He held her gaze another moment and then, almost too quietly, asked, "Is everything okay with us?" Emily felt her throat burn. This was the moment she should have confessed. Not about Leo, not yet, but about her loneliness, her hurt, her fading hope. But the moment passed, and she said the safest lie in the world. "Everything is fine." Daniel nodded, accepting her words at face value because he wanted to believe them. He didn't see her eyes flick away. He didn't see her fingers tremble around her fork. But he saw enough to feel a shift he couldn't yet name. Emily spent Sunday trying to convince herself that Saturday had been harmless. She cleaned the house, answered client messages, watered the plants, anything to avoid the quiet voice in her mind repeating what she already knew. She was sliding somewhere she might not be able to climb back from. Daniel worked most of the day in the study. She passed by the closed door several times, pausing once with her hand raised to knock, but she lowered it each time. What would she even say? "I'm slipping away, help me before I fall." The words never came. In the evening they sat side by side on the couch watching a documentary Daniel had chosen. The screen glowed in the dim room, coloring their faces blue. Daniel leaned into the cushions, legs stretched out. Emily sat straight, restless, her thoughts miles away. At one point Daniel looked at her, brow furrowed. "You okay?" "Yeah," she said too quickly. He hesitated, then nodded and looked back at the screen. She studied his profile in the flickering light, strong jaw, the slight crease between his eyebrows from years of focusing, the faint shadows under his eyes. She loved this man. She had loved him for years, but love wasn't always enough to keep you from drowning. Halfway through the documentary, Daniel's phone buzzed. He checked it and sighed, standing. "Work?" "Yeah, I'll just be 10 minutes." He disappeared into the study, door clicking shut. Emily stared at the screen for a moment, then pressed pause. The apartment was silent again. And in that silence, she realized she hadn't gone a single day without thinking of Leo. A message sent too quickly. Her phone lay on the coffee table, screen down. She shouldn't touch it. She shouldn't even look at it. She reached anyway. Her heart pounded as she unlocked it. Their message thread had become a space she both craved and feared, filled with half-flirtations, shared jokes, tiny moments that felt like stepping stones across a river. She typed before she could stop herself. "I shouldn't be thinking about you right now." She stared at the sentence, thumb hovering over delete. Instead, she hit send. Instant regret flooded her, but 15 seconds later the phone buzzed. "Leo." "Then don't think, come meet me." Emily closed her eyes. She could almost see him, sitting in some night-lit cafe or at his desk at home, looking at his phone with that half-smile that made her stomach flip. She typed slowly. "I can't, Daniel's home." 3 dots appeared. Home doesn't always mean present. Her chest tightened. She wrote back, "This isn't fair to him." He answered almost immediately. "Is it fair to you?" She set the phone down, unable to breathe. And then something in her, some part tired of being quiet, broke. She grabbed her coat and keys. A crossed line in the dark. Daniel's study door was still closed. She didn't knock, didn't say she was going out. She just stepped into the cool night air and walked to her car before she could think twice. Her phone buzzed. "Same cafe, I'll wait." She drove, hands trembling on the wheel, headlights carving tunnels in the darkness. She kept imagining Daniel walking out of the study and finding the empty living room, the paused documentary, the absence of a goodbye. The cafe lights glowed warm against the dark street. Her heart pounded as she walked toward the entrance. Then she saw him, Leo, standing outside, hands in his coat pockets, the wind teasing strands of his hair. When he spotted her, he smiled, soft, relieved, a little sad. A smile that said, "I didn't know if you'd come." Emily stopped a foot away. She was suddenly out of breath. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I know," he said, "but you are." She shook her head, looking away. "This is dangerous." Leo stepped closer, not so close to touch, but close enough that she could feel his warmth beneath the chill night air. "I'm not asking for anything," he said quietly. "Not a promise, not a future, just let me be someone who sees you, someone who listens." Her throat tightened. "Leo, this can't just be." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers slid along her jaw, warm and careful, tilting her face toward his. "Emily," he whispered. It was the way he said her name, like he'd been holding it in his mouth all day, that unmade her. And then he kissed her. No hesitation, no half measure. A real kiss, full, deep, hungry, but controlled, the kind that made the world go silent. Emily's hands went to his chest, meaning to push him away. Instead, they gripped his coat. The kiss lasted seconds, but changed everything. When they broke apart, she stood there trembling. "Oh God," she murmured, "what am I doing?" Leo's thumb brushed her lip, "Choosing something for yourself." She stepped back, breath unsteady, shaking her head. "I should go." But she didn't. She stood there, unable to move. Leo exhaled, voice low. "Do you want me to stop? Say it and I will." Her eyes lifted to his. And she couldn't say it, not because she didn't want to protect her marriage, but because she had already crossed the line. Instead, she whispered, "I don't know." He cupped her cheek, a sigh of something like relief escaping him. "Then don't decide tonight." He kissed her again, softer, lingering. When they finally stepped apart, Leo didn't push, didn't take her hand, didn't try to continue what had begun. He simply walked her to her car and opened the door. "Message me when you get home," he said gently. Emily nodded, stunned at the tenderness in the request. She drove home in silence, heart loud enough to drown out the engine. The lie at the doorway. Daniel was still in the study when she entered the house. She stood in the foyer, coat still on, trying to gather herself. The kiss still lingered on her lips. The guilt sat like ice in her stomach. She walked to the sink and splashed cold water on her face, trying to look less changed. Then Daniel's study door opened. He walked out, rubbing his neck. "Oh," he said, surprised, "you went for a walk?" Emily forced a steady voice. "Yeah, just needed some air." He nodded and leaned in to kiss her cheek. His lips were warm, familiar. Except now she flinched inside. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," she lied again. He smiled, relieved that her short answer meant he didn't need to dig deeper. But as he returned to the study, something flickered in his expression, a seed of doubt he couldn't yet name. Emily stood in the kitchen, staring at the place where he had stood seconds before, realizing the truth. She had kissed another man. And Daniel still trusted her. That was almost worse than if he had suspected everything. A night without sleep. Emily didn't message Leo right away. She paced the dark house, stopping at the bedroom doorway, looking at the bed she shared with a man who didn't know the shape of her loneliness. She imagined confessing everything. The shock, the hurt, the end. She couldn't. So she lay on her side facing away from Daniel, eyes open in the dark, listening to the rhythmic sound of his breathing. At 2:14 a.m., she finally picked up her phone. "I got home," Leo replied instantly. "I'm glad. Sleep well, Emily." She turned off the phone and stared into the darkness. Tomorrow, the world would still expect her to be the same woman. But she was. And there was no going back. Morning came too quickly. Emily woke to the pale gray light filtering through the curtains and the soft hum of Daniel's electric shaver in the bathroom. She lay still, staring at the ceiling, the weight of last night pressing down on her chest like a stone. She had crossed a line. Nothing dramatic had changed on the outside, but inside she felt split down the middle, two versions of herself fighting for space. Daniel appeared in the doorway, buttoning the cuffs of his shirt. He smiled, tired but genuine. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she managed. He came to kiss her cheek. She accepted the kiss, but the skin he touched burned with guilt. He didn't notice. "You're up early," he said, reaching for his tie. "Couldn't sleep well." He nodded sympathetically. "You should take it easy today. I'll be home late. Someone screwed up reports, so we're doing damage control." Of course, work came first. Emily forced a smile. "Good luck." "You too." He left the room, and seconds later she heard the front door close. She exhaled shakily, covering her face with both hands. The silence of the house wasn't peaceful anymore, it was accusing. She pulled out her phone. No new messages. She didn't know if she was relieved or disappointed. Then 10 minutes later it buzzed. "Leo." "Morning, how are you holding up?" Emily stared at the screen for a long time before typing. "I don't know." 3 dots appeared. "If you want space today, I'll understand." She swallowed. A healthy version of her life would have chosen space. A stronger woman would have cut him off right here. Instead she wrote, "Not yet," avoiding her own reflection. She tried to work. She opened design files, adjusted color palettes, edited layouts. But every time she paused, her mind filled with last night, the kiss in the dark, the way Leo's voice had wrapped around her like warmth she hadn't felt in years. Her phone buzzed again. "Leo, I'm in the cafe if you want some air." Her first instinct was to say no. Her second was to grab her coat. She stood there in her hallway with her keys in hand, staring at the closed front door, remembering Daniel kissing her goodbye just an hour ago. She could still stop all of this. She didn't. The cafe doesn't pretend. Leo looked up the moment she walked in. His gaze softened, relieved, warm, unguarded. He didn't get up or touch her, respecting the fragile thread of hesitation still holding her in place. "You look like you didn't sleep," he said gently. "I didn't." She sat down across from him. A steaming cup of cappuccino waited already. "You ordered for me." He shrugged lightly. "You always get it. I took a risk." The small gesture, thoughtful, intuitive, made something inside her twist painfully. How long had it been since someone noticed small details about her? They sat in silence for a moment. Then Leo spoke quietly. "Do you regret last night?" She gripped her cup, staring into the creamy foam. "I regret that I didn't stop it." Leo didn't flinch. "Do you regret the kiss itself?" She hesitated. "No." His expression shifted, not triumphant but deeply sad, as if he understood the tragedy of her truth. "I'm not here to ruin your marriage, Emily," he said. "If you walk away now, I will let you. No questions, no anger." Her throat tightened. She believed him. But she also knew that walking away wouldn't be clean, not with her heart already tangled in places it shouldn't be. "I don't know what I want," she whispered. "You want to feel alive," Leo said. She looked up sharply, eyes stinging. "Is that selfish?" "Yes," he said honestly, "but humans are often selfish when they're starving." The words hit her like a truth she had been avoiding for years. Daniel's first suspicion. That evening, Emily came home to find Daniel in the kitchen, earlier than expected. He was loosening his tie, shoulders tight, jaw set. "You're home early," she said, trying to sound normal. "Came back to pick up files." He turned to look at her. "I called earlier, you didn't pick up." Her pulse stumbled. "I was out." "Out where?" He wasn't accusing, just asking. But his eyes held something new, something sharper. "Just needed a walk, clear my head." Daniel watched her for a moment longer. "Emily," he said slowly, "are you okay?" There it was again, the door she should walk through, the chance to speak the truth. But the guilt choked her. "Of course," she said softly. His brow furrowed. He stepped closer and touched her arm gently. "If you're unhappy, I need to know." She swallowed. "I'm just tired." Another lie, easier than the truth. Daniel studied her another second, then kissed her forehead. "I'll get my files." He walked toward his study. Emily leaned against the kitchen counter, legs weak. For the first time, Daniel had looked at her and really seen something was off. And she had still lied. When he left 10 minutes later, he paused at the door. "You know you can talk to me," he said quietly. She nodded. He left anyway. An invitation too tempting. That night Emily sat on the couch with a glass of wine she barely touched. The house felt too big, too quiet. The silence pressed on her like a judgment. Her phone buzzed. "Leo, are you home?" She answered, "Yes." There was a long pause then. "I'd like to see you, but only if you want that too." Emily stared at the words until her eyes blurred. Wanting was not the problem. She wanted too much already. She typed, "I can't tonight." Leo replied, "I understand." But 10 seconds later, "I'll be thinking of you anyway." She closed her eyes, pressing a palm to her forehead. This was spiraling far too fast. And yet she didn't block him, didn't pull away. She sipped her wine, trying to settle the storm inside her. Then the door opened. Daniel walked in again, coat off, hair mussed from the wind. He dropped his briefcase and stood in the living room doorway, looking hesitant. "Hey," he said. "Hi," she replied, sitting up. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Work's going to hell. Mind if I sit with you?" He sounded almost uncertain, as though he wasn't sure he belonged anymore. "Of course," she said softly. Daniel sat beside her, not touching, not relaxed but present, and that alone was rare. After a quiet minute, he spoke. "I feel like I'm losing you." The words hit like a punch to the chest. Emily gripped the edge of the couch cushion. "You're not," she lied. Daniel looked at her, not angry, not suspicious, just scared. "Then talk to me, Emily. Tell me what's going on." Her lips parted. Every secret, every ache, every lonely night rose up inside her. She could tell him everything. She could finally be honest. But then she imagined his face when he learned the truth, the betrayal, the pain. Her courage collapsed. "I'm just stressed," she whispered. "Work, hormones, I don't know." Daniel exhaled slowly, not convinced but too exhausted to push. He put an arm around her shoulders. She let him. He rested his cheek against her temple. She stared straight ahead, eyes wide open, guilt burning holes through her ribs. After a while he stood. "I should get some sleep." Emily nodded. But when she lay in bed beside him later, she couldn't close her eyes. Daniel slept with his arm just barely brushing hers, an intimacy that once would have comforted her. Now it only reminded her of the distance they pretended didn't exist. In the dark, she picked up her phone. "Thank you for today," she sent Leo without thinking. A moment later. "Always." Emily turned off the screen and stared at the ceiling. The cracks in her marriage were no longer invisible. Soon someone would fall through them. The end didn't arrive with shouting or accusations. It came quietly, like everything else that had been eroding between them for months. But once it began, it moved with the force of a storm. It started on a Wednesday evening. Daniel came home early, earlier than usual, carrying takeaway from Emily's favorite Thai place. He walked into the kitchen humming faintly under his breath, relief softening his features. For a moment, Emily felt a flicker of warmth seeing him like that, unburdened, trying, almost hopeful. "Thought we could have dinner together," he said, unpacking boxes of steaming curry and noodles. "I know I've been absent lately." Emily forced a smile. "That sounds nice." "It's long overdue." He set the food on the counter. "Let's call tonight a restart." A restart. If only it had come sooner. They sat across from each other at the kitchen island, the soft light making Daniel look younger, less exhausted. He talked about work, less than usual, more casually. Emily listened, offering small smiles, answering quietly. Anyone glancing in from the outside would have seen a perfectly normal married couple sharing dinner. But Emily's stomach churned with guilt. She kept reaching for her phone and then stopping herself. She didn't want to be rude. Worse, she didn't want to reveal what she was terrified of. She was waiting for a message from Leo. Halfway through the meal, Daniel paused, chopsticks suspended. "Emily." She blinked. "Yes." "I want to ask you something, and I need the truth." Her heart stuttered. "Of course," she said too quickly. Daniel watched her for a long, unsettling moment. His voice was quiet when he said, "Are you seeing someone else?" The air left Emily's lungs. For a second, the world threw itself into dreadful silence. The refrigerator's hum, the distant tick of the kitchen clock, her pulse roaring in her ears. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Daniel set down his chopsticks, hands trembling slightly. "I didn't want to think it, but you've changed, Emily. You're somewhere else when you're here with me." She swallowed. "Daniel, I." He raised a hand to stop her. "I'm not angry," he said, voice cracking. I'm scared I already lost you." Fresh tears burned Emily's eyes. She looked down at the countertop, her reflection warped by the polished granite. "You didn't lose me," she whispered. But even she heard the lie in her voice. Daniel leaned back slowly, devastation softening his expression. Not rage, not hatred, just sorrow. "Who is he?" Her shoulders stiffened. "It's complicated." "That means there is someone," he said quietly. Emily closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. I never meant for this to happen. He let out a broken laugh. No one ever does. He stood, packing a few steps, running a shaking hand through his hair. How long? She hesitated. A few weeks. Daniel's shoulders sagged as though the wind had been knocked from him. Have you? His voice faltered. Was it physical? Emily looked at the floor. Just one kiss. Daniel exhaled, sharp, wounded, but he didn't yell. How long have you been unhappy? He asked, voice hoarse. Emily wiped her face. A long time. The truth spilled out now, quiet, unstoppable. You're always working. You're here but not really here. I didn't want someone else, Daniel. I just wanted to feel like I mattered to someone. I tried not to feel this way, I did, but the silence between us got so loud. Daniel sank into a chair, staring into nothing. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, she whispered, but I think you were too tired to hear. He closed his eyes. She expected anger, betrayal, but instead he said something far more unbearable. I can't blame you. Emily looked up sharply. Daniel. No, he said quietly. This is on me too. I was so focused on providing that I forgot to be present. I forgot you. He rubbed his forehead, breathing unevenly. But you still made a choice, he added softly. A choice that didn't include me. She nodded, tears flowing freely now. I'm sorry. He looked at her, not cold, not furious, but irreparably hurt. Do you love him? Emily froze. Did she? She didn't know. She loved the way Leo made her feel seen, alive, heard. But love, she didn't trust her heart enough to answer. I don't know, she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. Then we have to figure out whether there's anything left to save. A night of hard truths. They talked for hours, more than they had in the past year combined. For the first time, their words weren't about schedules or bills or work. They were about pain. Emily told him about her loneliness, the empty dinner tables, the nights spent beside a man who was already half asleep. Daniel listened, eyes full of regret, occasionally wiping at tears he didn't bother to hide. When she finished, he spoke quietly. I didn't know you were drowning. She shook her head. I didn't scream loud enough. He reached across the table and took her hand. The familiar weight of it broke something open inside her. No more quiet, Daniel said. Not between us. If we fix this, we talk, even when it's ugly. She nodded, squeezing his hand. But then Daniel asked, in a voice so small it shattered her. Do you want to try to fix it? Emily opened her mouth, but no answer came. The silence between them was enough. Daniel dropped her hand slowly. A choice made in the dark. That night, Emily stood outside on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the quiet street. The wind rustled the branches of the maple tree in their front yard. The house behind her was lit, warm, but weighed down by the conversation still echoing within it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Leo, are you okay? She stared at the message. For the first time since she met him, she didn't answer immediately. Daniel had finally noticed her, had finally seen the distance between them. And yet was it too late? Her phone buzzed again. I'm here if you need me. Emily typed slowly. I told him. A long pause. Then. And now. Emily looked through the window at Daniel sitting at the kitchen table, face in his hands. I don't know, she wrote. This time, Leo took longer to respond. Whatever happens, choose the path that lets you look at yourself in the mirror. She closed her eyes. For the first time, his message didn't feel like temptation. It felt like freedom. She typed, I need time. Leo replied, take it, I won't push. Then nothing more. She slipped her phone back into her pocket. The decision. She returned inside to find Daniel exactly as she left him. He looked up, eyes red, voice rough. Emily, Even if this marriage is over, I need to know one thing." She held her breath. "Were you already gone before him?" The question hit with stunning clarity. And she realized, yes, she had left the marriage long before Leo entered it. She had just never walked out the door. She nodded once. Daniel closed his eyes and exhaled, the truth settling between them like dust after impact. He stood, voice barely holding together. "Then I think we should take some space, real space, a few weeks, separate apartments, no pretending." Emily swallowed. "I understand. And after that, we'll see if there's anything left worth saving." She nodded. They stood facing each other, not as husband and wife, but as two people standing among the ruins of 8 silent years. Before going upstairs, Daniel turned back. "I loved you, Emily," he said quietly. "I wish I had shown it better." Her voice cracked. "I loved you too, I still do." He nodded once, then disappeared up the stairs. When she heard the bedroom door close, Emily sank to the floor and cried, not for losing Daniel, not for losing Leo, but for losing the version of herself who once believed marriages broke loudly. Because sometimes they shattered in complete silence. What remains? 3 days later, Emily packed a suitcase and moved into a short-term apartment close to the river. Daniel helped her carry the boxes without complaint. They hugged at the door, gently, briefly, the way people do when they're trying not to fall apart. They didn't decide whether they would divorce or rebuild. They simply agreed to breathe. Emily didn't run to Leo. In fact, they barely spoke. She sent one message. "I need to repair myself before I choose anyone." His reply came hours later. "That's the first real step forward. I'm proud of you." No demands, no pressure. Just support. Emily stood at her new window that night, looking at the glittering river, feeling pain and relief braided together. Her marriage wasn't over, but it wasn't whole either. It was something new, something uncertain, something alive enough to be repaired or released. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, not passion, not certainty, but agency, the ability to choose. And for now, that was enough.